A quiet park on a golden afternoon. A little girl sat on the swing, her lips sealed in a silence that had lasted for years. Doctors had said she might never speak again. Her father, a wealthy businessman, had learned to live with the ache of her muteness, though it cut deeper than any financial loss he had ever endured. But that day, something happened that would shake him to his core. A stranger approached, someone society often judged by the color of his skin. And in a moment that defied logic, prejudice, and expectation, the impossible unfolded before his very eyes. The story began in a world of privilege. The father, Richard Hale, was not just any man. He was a self-made millionaire whose name appeared in business magazines and whose fortune opened doors everywhere he went. Yet despite all his success, his heart carried a wound no wealth could heal. His only daughter, Emily, had stopped speaking when she was only 5. A sudden trauma had stolen her voice, and since then, silence had been her constant companion. Richard had tried everything: renowned doctors, advanced therapies, and even specialists flown in from across the globe. Each one had delivered the same carefully measured phrases: irreversible, low chances, prepare for permanence. To the world, Richard was powerful, decisive, unstoppable. But when he looked at Emily, sitting quietly in her pink dresses, clutching dolls without uttering a word, he felt helpless. To distract his daughter from the isolation of her condition, Richard often took her to the park. The swings, the flowers, and the laughter of other children gave Emily something to hold on to, even if she never joined in. For Richard, those visits were bittersweet reminders of what she had lost. On one particular day, the sun cast long shadows across the playground. Emily sat on the swing, watching other children run and shout while her silence hung in the air like an invisible barrier. Richard, dressed in his usual crisp shirt and polished shoes, stood nearby, lost in thought. He had long accepted that. Strangers often stared at him, not because of his wealth, but because of Emily's silence. What he did not expect, however, was that this ordinary afternoon would bring an encounter destined to challenge not only his beliefs, but also the prejudices of those around him. As Emily's swing creaked softly in the breeze, Richard's thoughts wandered. He was used to people staring at him in admiration for his wealth, his sharp suits, his expensive cars. But here in the park, it was different. The whispers, the pitiful looks, the quiet pointing, none of it was about him. It was about Emily. Strangers wondered why this bright-eyed child sat silently, never laughing, never calling out to her father. And Richard, though outwardly stoic, carried the sting of every glance deep inside. On this particular afternoon, a man approached the playground. His presence was quiet, but undeniable. He wasn't dressed like the other parents in business attire, nor did he carry the polished aura of wealth. His clothes were simple, his steps unhurried, and his eyes carried a depth that suggested he had seen more of life's hardships than comforts. He walked with purpose, yet with a gentleness that didn't match the judgment he would immediately receive. For the moment he entered the park, heads turned. His skin color alone drew whispers from some parents who clutched their children a little closer, as if danger had just walked among them. Richard noticed, too. Years of living in privilege had made him sensitive to how quickly society divided itself along invisible lines. He could see the subtle tightening of shoulders, the murmurs, the unease. And when the man walked toward the swings where Emily sat, Richard instinctively stiffened. A father's protectiveness flared in him. He wanted to step between the stranger and his daughter. But something in the man's expression, held him back. The man crouched down in front of Emily, not asking permission, not hesitating, simply lowering himself to her level. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he looked at her with an attentiveness that Richard had rarely seen, even from the most highly paid specialists. It was as if this stranger saw past the silence, past the diagnosis, past the barrier that had trapped her for years. Emily, usually avoiding strangers, didn't look away. Her eyes fixed on him, cautious yet curious. The park around them faded. Children still played, parents still whispered, but in that moment, a quiet connection began forming between two souls who, on the surface, couldn't have been more different. The man finally lifted his hand, gently placing 2 fingers over his lips, mimicking her silence. Then he tapped his chest once, slowly, as though saying, "I understand." Emily blinked, her small fingers gripping the swing's chains tighter, and for the first time she didn't shrink back. Richard watched with a mix of awe and disbelief. Why was Emily responding? Therapists, teachers, even family members had tried countless techniques to break through her wall of silence. None had worked. Yet here was a stranger, a man judged by others before he even spoke, finding a way to reach her. Around them, the tension in the air grew heavier. Some parents muttered disapproval under their breath. A few shook their heads as if this interaction were inappropriate. Others simply stared, their prejudices written plainly across their faces. Richard felt the weight of their judgment, too. As a man of influence, he was used to controlling every narrative, every impression. But here, under the open sky, he was powerless. The stranger didn't seem to notice or didn't care. His entire focus remained on Emily, whose breathing had changed, whose eyes now glistened as though a long, locked door within her had been nudged open. Richard's heart pounded. Could this be the moment he had prayed for all these years? The air in the park seemed to still. Richard stood frozen, unable to take his eyes away from his daughter. Emily's small hands trembled as she stared at the man kneeling before her. For years, she had lived inside her silence, as though words had been locked away in some unreachable place. But now, something was shifting. The man placed his hand gently on the wooden frame of the swing, keeping his eyes steady on hers. His presence carried no demand, no pressure, only an unspoken assurance that she was safe. He tapped the swing lightly, then tapped his own chest once more, his silent language inviting her to respond. And then, in the smallest, most fragile sound, a whisper escaped Emily's lips. It was not a full word, not even a clear sound, but it was voice. Richard's breath caught in his throat. He leaned forward as if fearing the moment might vanish like a dream if he moved too suddenly. The man's expression softened with encouragement. And Emily tried again. This time, a faint syllable formed, a single attempt at a word she hadn't spoken since childhood. Tears welled in Richard's eyes. His daughter was speaking. After years of silence, after countless attempts, it was happening right before him, and not in the office of a doctor, not in the presence of wealth or science, but in the hands of a stranger society had already dismissed. Around them, the whispers grew louder. Some parents pulled their children away, muttering that this was inappropriate, that such closeness was suspicious. Prejudice wrapped itself tightly around their judgments, blinding them to the miracle unfolding before their eyes. Yet Richard could not look away. Emily's lips moved again, and this time a faint but distinct word broke through. It was small, it was trembling, but it was real. Her father staggered back, tears streaming freely, overwhelmed by the sound he thought he might never hear again. At that moment, Richard realized that everything he had believed about control, about solutions, about where healing could be found, had been shattered. It was not his wealth that gave Emily her voice back. It was compassion. It was understanding. And it had come from the very man the world around them had chosen to judge. Richard stood rooted in place, watching Emily's lips tremble as if she had just discovered a hidden key inside herself. The stranger's gentle presence lingered like a shield, holding back the weight of years of silence. Emily's faint word hung in the air, fragile but undeniable. And for Richard, it was the sweetest sound he had ever heard. He wanted to rush forward, to scoop her into his arms, but something inside him told him not to interrupt. This moment was hers. The man slowly rose from his crouch, his gaze still fixed on Emily with quiet pride, as if he had known all along that she carried this strength within her. He gave a small nod, a silent encouragement, before stepping back. And in that simple retreat, Richard understood something profound. This stranger had not taken credit, nor sought recognition. He had only offered kindness, and in doing so, opened a door no one else could. Richard felt the stares pressing in from every corner of the park. Some eyes were wide with disbelief, others narrowed with judgment. Parents whispered, not about the miracle of a child finding her voice, but about the audacity of a black man daring to be near her. The ugliness of their prejudice was undeniable. But for once, Richard did not care about their opinions. Their whispers seemed small, meaningless against the miracle he had just witnessed. As Emily looked at him, her lips moving once more in a fragile attempt to form sound, Richard fell to his knees beside her, tears flowing freely. It wasn't wealth, nor status, nor influence that had brought this change. It was empathy, the kind that society often overlooks, buried beneath bias and fear. That night, as Richard carried his daughter home, he replayed the scene again and again. The whispers of the crowd faded from memory, but the sound of Emily's voice, shaky, faint, yet alive, echoed within him like a symphony. He knew the world would continue to judge people based on skin, status, or silence. But he also knew that in the smallest corners of life, compassion could shatter every barrier. And so the question lingered for those who heard this story. If prejudice can blind us to miracles, how many have we already missed?